I never imagined it would come to this, but when my landlord knocked on my door, I realized I had no other options. 3 months behind on rent, no money to pay, and no one to turn to. Then he made me an offer, one I should have turned down, but I didn't. I flinched at the knock, my robe slipping open and revealing my bare thigh, but I was too tired to care. I opened the door. Mr. Harris stood there, his gaze slowly scanning me. "You're 3 months behind on rent, Julia," he said. I pulled my robe tighter. "I know, Mr. Harris. I just need a bit more time." He stepped inside, closing the door behind him. The air felt thicker, and his gaze lingered. "It's a shame to see a woman like you struggling," he said softly. "So beautiful, yet so helpless." Heat rushed to my skin. "I'll figure something out," I said. He sighed, shaking his head. "Time doesn't pay the bills, sweetheart." I had tried everything. Extra shifts, borrowing, cutting back. Nothing worked. "Please, just a little more time," I pleaded. He studied me, then suggested, "Or maybe there's another way." My stomach clenched. There it was. The unspoken offer now laid bare. "What do you mean?" I asked. He stepped closer. "Come on, Julia. You know exactly what I mean." The room felt smaller. My robe seemed thinner. "No one has to know," he whispered. "Just between us." I hesitated, my heart racing as he smirked, watching me squirm. "I can make your problems disappear," he said. I exhaled shakily, realizing I had no other choice. Slowly, I nodded. His smile grew, and he reached for my robe's belt. "Good girl." Mr. Harris led me into the bedroom. His grip firm, yet unhurried. The air felt heavy, pressing against my skin as I stepped inside. The familiar scent of his aftershave and something deeper filled my senses. Without wasting time, he stood at the edge of the bed and slowly unbuckled his belt. The sound of metal sending a shiver through me. "You know what to do, sweetheart," he said. I swallowed, a lump forming in my throat. My fingers clenched into fists by my sides. His lips curled into a mix of amusement and control. "Don't act so surprised, Julia," he said. "You agreed, remember?" A nervous electric warmth curled in my stomach. I swallowed hard and lowered myself to my knees. His fingers tangled in my hair as I leaned in, feeling the heat of his body and his scent overwhelming me. I pressed my lips against his, moving cautiously. He exhaled sharply, tightening his grip slightly, guiding me. The sounds he made sent an unexpected thrill through me. I shouldn't have liked it, but I did. His breathing deepened, his body tensing, and I could tell he was losing himself in the moment. A strange sense of control stirred inside me as I found my rhythm. Just as I settled into it, he pulled away, his breath ragged. "Get on top," he said, his voice thick with desire. I obeyed, standing and moving onto the bed. My robe slipped open as I straddled him, and his hands immediately found my thighs, sliding up my skin, squeezing as if he needed to feel every inch of me. "That's it," he murmured, his eyes locked on mine. I reached down, aligning myself with him, a sharp gasp escaping my lips as I sank onto him. He groaned, his fingers pressing into my hips. "You feel better than I imagined," he said. I ignored the warmth spreading through me at his words. This was just a deal. But as I began to move, a deep, pulsing pleasure rippled through me. My body betrayed me, responding eagerly, craving more. I bit my lip, trying to keep my face neutral. But inside, heat spread with every movement. "Go on, Julia. Ride me like you mean it," he said, his voice strained, his grip firm as he guided me. I quickened my pace, my breathing unsteady. Each motion sent another wave of sensation through me, making it harder to pretend I wasn't enjoying it. He smirked at me, as if he could see through my act. "You like this?" he murmured. "No," I lied, my breath hitching as I moved faster. His grip tightened, his body rising to meet mine in perfect rhythm. The tension between us grew, deeper and heavier. I clenched my jaw, desperate to hold back any sound that might give me away. "Keep going," he growled, his control slipping. His eyes never left mine, watching every movement, every unspoken reaction. I dug my nails into his chest, holding on as his pleasure built inside me, threatening to spill over. His breath hitched, his body tensed beneath me, and then with a final shudder, he exhaled, locking me in place as he reached his peak. I followed soon after, my body trembling from the intensity. I swallowed my moans, keeping my face unreadable as I collapsed onto him, my body still humming. For a moment, we lay there, our breathing heavy, our skin damp and warm. Slowly, I moved off him, sitting at the edge of the bed. I didn't say anything. I didn't need to. But deep down, I knew the truth. I had enjoyed every second of it, and so had he. I sat on the edge of the bed, pulling my robe around me, though it did little to cover what had already been seen. My skin still tingled, and my breath was still unsteady. I felt his eyes on me, watching, waiting. "You surprised me, Julia," he said, his voice smooth and amused. "I didn't expect you to enjoy yourself that much." Heat flickered in my stomach. I ignored it. "It was just a deal," I murmured. He chuckled. "Sure, if that's what you need to believe." A silence stretched between us. I should have felt ashamed, but I didn't. Not entirely. A part of me had liked it more than I wanted to admit. "I have another proposition for you," he said. I glanced at him. "What do you mean?" He leaned against the headboard, his shirt still open, his expression unreadable. "You enjoyed this. I know you did. And there are men who'd pay good money for a woman like you." I stiffened. "You're joking." "Not at all," he replied, his eyes studying me closely. "You said you're out of options, but you don't have to be. You could turn this into something lucrative." My breath caught. "That's different." I stopped, not having the words. "Just a favor, just for fun." His smirk deepened. "It's your choice," he said, standing up and buttoning his shirt. "You don't have to say yes, but if you do, I know 2 men who'd pay well for a night with you." A chill ran through me. Not just 1, 2. I swallowed hard. It should have been an easy no, but it wasn't. "How much?" I asked. His smirk widened. "More than you've ever made in one night." I exhaled slowly, my pulse hammering in my ears. 1 night, 2 men, a choice that could change everything. I lifted my chin and nodded. "All right." "Mr." Harris grinned and reached for his phone. "Good girl, I'll make the call." The next evening, I stood in front of the mirror, smoothing my dress over my hips. It was tight and low cut, just revealing enough. Mr. Harris had picked it out, along with a pair of heels that made my legs look longer than I remembered. I barely recognized myself. My hands trembled slightly as I adjusted my hair. Why was I nervous? I had already made my choice. There was no turning back now. "You look perfect," Mr. Harris murmured from the doorway, his eyes roving over me in approval. "They'll love you." I swallowed hard, exhaling through my nose. "Who are they?" I asked. "Friends?" he said with a smirk. "Generous ones. You give them a good night, Julia, and you'll never have to worry about rent again." A knock at the door made my heart race. They were here. Mr. Harris's smirk deepened. "Showtime, sweetheart." I turned toward the door, my heart pounding as I reached for the handle. I opened the door to find two men standing there, their eyes dark and expressions impossible to decipher. They were here for me. I guided them into the room, my heart racing with every step, anticipation hanging thick in the air. My heels clicked softly against the floor as they followed closely, their presence enveloping me. Two pairs of eyes, two men focused entirely on me. I had agreed to this, wanted it even, yet a flicker of uncertainty stirred within me, mingled with a spark of excitement. The taller one, broad-shouldered and exuding confidence, was the first to reach for me. His hand settled firmly on my waist, deliberate and intentional, his fingers pressing lightly, as if memorizing every contour. The other, slimmer and sharp-eyed, lingered just behind, his breath warm against my shoulder, sending an unexpected shiver down my spine. "Let's take care of this," the first murmured, his fingers brushing the strap of my dress, teasing the fabric as his gaze locked with mine. Slowly layers fell away, fabric slipping effortlessly, hands following, exploring, learning, appreciating. As cool air met my skin, I reached out in return, my fingertips tracing the firm lines beneath their clothes, testing their reactions. Their eyes never left me, watching, waiting. A slow exhale escaped my lips. There was no hesitation. I wanted to give them exactly what they were waiting for. I moved with purpose, my fingers working through the closures of their belts, undoing each one at a steady pace, feeling the tension beneath the layers between us. Their breathing deepened, muscles shifting as I explored, warmth radiating under my touch. A low sound escaped the first man, a note of appreciation as he tilted my chin up, his expression unreadable. "Just like that," he murmured, his voice smooth, but edged with something darker. A familiar heat surged through me, both thrilling and dangerous in the way they watched me. My knees bent, movements deliberate, as I lowered myself, my hands still wrapped around them, warmth pressing against my skin. One hovered near my lips, a silent invitation. I leaned in, welcoming him, tasting the heat, tracing his shape with careful attention. Above me, he inhaled sharply, his fingers threading through my hair, guiding me with the gentlest touch. The second man wasn't forgotten. My other hand worked him with equal focus, teasing, drawing out each reaction. His breath hitched, his fingers brushing my jaw as he studied me, absorbed in every moment. Their combined presence, the quiet sounds they made, the tension winding through the space between us, it sent a slow, deep warmth spreading through my core. "That's it," one of them murmured, his voice thick with satisfaction. The words sent another rush through me. They let me move at my own pace, allowing me to explore, to lose myself in them. Then, one of them shifted back slightly, clearing his throat as if regaining focus. "Come here," he said, his voice low and steady. "We're just getting started." I settled onto the bed, my breath uneven, my body humming with anticipation. The taller man positioned himself between my legs, his fingertips drawing slow, deliberate circles along my inner thighs, teasing, heightening the tension. The other moved beside me, his hand finding my chin, tilting my face toward him, his gaze locking onto mine with quiet intensity. "Let's see just how sweet you are," the first murmured, his voice deep and laced with amusement. Then he lowered himself, his breath warm against my skin, before the first flicker of a sensation sent a shudder through me. A sharp gasp caught in my throat as his lips explored me. His touch slow, patient, deliberate. My fingers curled into the sheets, gripping them as each movement sent another wave of sensation through me. The second man leaned in, his mouth brushing against mine before deepening the kiss, his lips parting against mine. I welcomed him, letting his warmth consume me, muffling the sounds escaping my throat as pleasure built between us. They moved in perfect rhythm, one unraveling me with his mouth, the other drawing me deeper into the kiss, his fingers threading through my hair, keeping me close. "Incredible," one of them murmured, his voice filled with admiration. I should have felt nervous, should have hesitated, but I didn't. I wanted more, and they could see it. They guided me effortlessly, shifting me into position, as if they already knew what I needed. Now I was on all fours, my body still trembling, still buzzing from their touch. The second man, the one who had been watching, waiting patiently until now, moved behind me, his hand steady on my waist, grounding me. "You ready for more?" he asked, his voice low and knowing. I barely had time to respond before he pressed forward, a slow, measured pressure that sent a deep, unrelenting warmth spiraling through me. My breath hitched, my fingers tightening against the sheets as my body adjusted to him. He groaned softly, his grip securing me in place, his movements steady and deliberate, as if savoring every moment. The first man moved in front of me, his fingers skimming my jaw, coaxing my gaze upward. "Let me feel you," he murmured. I parted my lips, welcoming him, the heat of him against me, the steady rhythm of his breath mixing with mine. "Just like that," he whispered, his thumb brushing along my cheek, his fingers tangling into my hair. They moved together, each guiding me, their rhythm sinking into me, one keeping my body steady, the other keeping my focus locked on him. A quiet moan escaped my throat, the vibrations making the man in front of me inhale sharply, his fingers flexing against my skin. Behind me, the second man shifted, his pace becoming fluid, drawing another gasp from me as warmth pulled deep within my core. "You love this, don't you?" one of them murmured, his voice teasing and knowing. I whimpered softly, my body betraying me, the truth evident in every movement, every sound. I did. I loved every second of it. They weren't finished. They moved me again, lifting me, shifting me seamlessly into a new position, guiding me exactly where they wanted me. Now, I was on top, the first man's hands firm on my hips, grounding me. His gaze met mine, a flicker of satisfaction playing across his lips. "Let me see how much you want this," he murmured, his grip tightening just enough to steady me. A slow breath escaped my lips as I sank onto him, a deep warmth building inside me, the stretch sending another shudder down my spine. His head fell back against the pillows, a quiet groan slipping from his lips as I moved against him. But behind me, the second man wasn't done. I felt his touch first, teasing, testing, his fingers exploring the curve of my back, waiting for my reaction. A sharp breath left me, anticipation curling through my stomach. A flicker of hesitation met with an even deeper sense of want. He leaned forward, his breath hot against my ear. "Take your time," he murmured. "I'll guide you through it." I exhaled, my body tensing, adjusting, a slow, gradual acceptance as he pressed forward. The heat between us intensified, the moment stretching, bodies sinking in perfect rhythm. "That's it," one of them groaned. "Just like that." I wasn't sure who spoke. I was too lost in it, too overwhelmed by the way they moved with me, their touch, their breath, their bodies keeping pace with mine. They worked in tandem, one steadying my hips, the other pressing closer, their movements precise, controlled. The pressure built slowly, spreading through me in waves, my breath coming faster as the sensation coiled tighter and tighter. "You're incredible," one of them murmured, his voice reverent, filled with something raw. "Look at her," the other whispered, his fingers skimming my spine, making me shudder. Completely lost in it I was. I couldn't hold back anymore. The tension inside me coiled to its peak, a final deep pull that unraveled me completely. Warmth crashing through my body in waves. Then, a sharp inhale from beneath me, his fingers pressing into my skin, his body tensing as his rhythm faltered. A low groan behind me, his grip steadying me as he let go, following right after. The moment stretched, breathless and infinite, before fading into warmth. The room settled into silence, the only sound the slowing rise and fall of our breaths. In the end, I never expected to enjoy it. I never expected to want more. But now I can't stop thinking about it. So tell me, was I wrong, or was this exactly what I needed? Steam enveloped me, thick and heavy, surrounding my body with warmth as I sank further into the bath. The house was supposed to be empty. My daughter wouldn't return until tomorrow, leaving me with the night to myself. My eyelids fluttered shut as I relaxed, my fingers slowly tracing the water's surface, savoring the warmth against my skin. It had been so long since I had truly let myself unwind like this. I exhaled deeply, letting go of the tension. Then the door suddenly opened, and a sharp breath, not mine, filled the air. My eyes snapped open to find him standing there, tall, strong, frozen. His hand tightened around the towel, draped over his shoulder. His chest rising and falling as if he had forgotten how to breathe. It was Liam, my daughter's boyfriend. His eyes flickered briefly, but enough for me to see the shock in them, followed by something unreadable. Heat surged into my face, and I quickly moved to cover myself, but it was too late. He had already seen me. "Shh, sorry," he stammered, his voice cracking, his Adam's apple bobbing. Neither of us moved, and for what felt like an eternity, we stood there in silence. Finally, he jerked away, his breath sharp as he slammed the door shut behind him. I stayed where I was, heart pounding in my ears, my skin flushed. Not just from the bath, but from everything that had just happened. He had thought I wasn't home. I had thought I was alone. But now, we both knew exactly what we had walked in on. I should have been mortified. I should have screamed or covered myself. But all I could think about was the expression on his face. When the door slammed, I exhaled sharply and pressed a hand to my chest, my pulse thundering beneath my fingertips. I needed to get control of myself. Grabbing a robe, I hurriedly wrapped it around me, but the fabric was thin, barely reaching my thighs, and the sash was the only thing keeping it closed. It wasn't the most modest choice, but I wasn't about to search through my closet with my daughter's boyfriend downstairs. I swallowed hard, my throat tight. By the time I reached the kitchen, they were already there. My daughter smiling brightly, Liam sitting at the counter with one hand around a drink. The moment I entered, his gaze shifted upward, locking with mine for a brief second before quickly looking away. He shifted in his seat, tightening his grip around the glass. He wasn't supposed to be here, yet there he was. Then my daughter turned to me, all smiles. "Mom, I hope it's okay that Liam's staying the night." I hesitated. His presence was already too much, too close. But what could I say? I forced a smile. "Of course. Make yourself at home." Liam gave a slight nod, acknowledging me with his glass. But his eyes flickered over me again. Just for a moment. Enough to make my skin burn. I tightened my robe, knowing this was going to be a long night. Nightfall arrived, and the house sank into a deep silence after dinner. Mia and Liam retreated to her room, their laughter slowly fading behind the closed door. I lingered downstairs for a while, sipping tea in an attempt to calm my nerves, trying to shake the memory of the way his eyes had lingered on me. Now, alone in my bed, I stared at the ceiling, willing myself to fall asleep. Then I heard it. Soft at first, muffled. A quiet shift in the sheets, followed by a hushed whisper. Then came a sound that froze my breath in my chest. A moan. I tensed, telling myself it was all in my head, that the house was playing tricks on me. But then it came again, faint but unmistakable. My heart pounded as I turned onto my side, gripping the edge of the blanket. I shouldn't be hearing this. Another soft gasp slipped through the walls, followed by a quiet laugh. My stomach twisted. I should get up, turn on the TV, put on headphones, and drown it out. But I couldn't move. The noises were clearer now, rhythmic, breathless, and unavoidable. My face burned as I lay there, stiff, unsure what to do, unsure how to deal with this entire situation. This was wrong. I shouldn't be hearing it. Yet, no matter how hard I tried to block it out, one thought wormed its way in. One realization that made my pulse skip. Liam was good. Too good. And I had no idea what to do with that knowledge. I pulled the covers over my head as though that would erase the sounds, but it wouldn't. I couldn't unhear it. And worse, I couldn't stop thinking about it. The house had gone quiet again, the sounds stopping, leaving a thick, suffocating silence in their wake. But sleep wouldn't come. I lay there, staring at the ceiling, my mind refusing to settle, no matter how much I tried to push it away. It lingered, freezing me in the moment, unable to stop listening. With a frustrated sigh, I threw the covers off and got out of bed. I needed something to clear my head. Padding down the stairs, the cool tile underfoot grounded me as I entered the kitchen. I reached for a bottle of wine, poured myself a glass, and took a slow sip, hoping it would help ease the tension coiling in my chest. That's when I felt it. A presence behind me. I turned to find Liam standing in the dim light of the kitchen, shirtless, wearing nothing but his underwear. I inhaled sharply, my fingers tightening around the glass. He leaned against the doorway, his arms crossed over his bare chest, his body still warm from wherever he had been moments before. His gaze swept over me, slow and assessing, before a smirk tugged at the corner of his mouth. "Were we too loud?" he asked, his voice low, teasing. I opened my mouth, but no words came out. Heat flooded my face, embarrassment twisting in my stomach. I shook my head and took another sip of wine, hoping he wouldn't notice how my hands were trembling. Liam did notice, and he stepped closer. "Did we keep you up?" he asked. His voice softer now, almost playful. I turned away, pretending to focus on my drink, but it was impossible to ignore the heat of his body. The way he carried himself, confident, relaxed, fully aware of what he was doing. Then my eyes dropped lower. A mistake, because there it was, bold and undeniable. My breath caught. He noticed, and he didn't pull back. "I get it," he murmured, his gaze fixed on me. "It's a lot, isn't it?" I swallowed hard. "You should go back to bed," I said. His smirk deepened. "Are you sure that's what you want?" In an instant, the space between us disappeared. Liam's fingers brushed over mine, slow and deliberate, as if waiting for me to stop him. I didn't. My breath hitched as he guided my hand lower, pressing it against the undeniable shape of him. Solid, hot, unmistakable. My fingers curled instinctively. My pulse roared in my ears. His eyes never left mine, watching, waiting. "See what you do to me," he murmured, a shiver running down my spine. I should have pulled away, should have left, but instead I let him untie the sash of my robe. The fabric slipped from my shoulders, cool air meeting heated skin, pooling at my feet. Liam's breath caught. His hands rose to trace the newly exposed curves of my body, his touch igniting something deep, something dangerous. Then his lips were on my neck, soft at first, then firmer, bolder. A gasp escaped me as my hands gripped his arms, feeling his mouth trail lower, kissing, teasing, tasting. His fingers dug into my hips, pulling me closer, guiding me exactly where he wanted me. Then he went lower. A sharp breath left me as his lips found my chest. His teeth grazing my skin, teasing, sending waves of sensation through me. My head tipped back, and a quiet, shaky sound escaped my lips before I could stop it. Liam groaned softly, gripping my waist. Then, in one swift motion, he lifted me effortlessly, settling me onto the cool granite of the kitchen counter. A rush of nerves and excitement shot through me. The risk, the thrill. We weren't alone in the house. At any moment, we could be caught. I barely had time to process it before he pressed forward. His body against mine, his heat unmistakable. My legs instinctively wrapped around him, pulling him closer. "You're unbelievable," he murmured, his voice thick with something between awe and hunger. Then he pressed forward, slow and deliberate. My lips parted on a shaky breath, my fingers tightening in his hair, gripping his shoulders. Liam stilled, exhaling hard against my neck, as if trying to hold himself back. Then he moved, slow and steady at first. His hand steadied me, grounding me. My nails dug into his back as he buried himself deeper. His breath grew heavier, rougher. The tension between us mounted, spiraling, climbing, until suddenly he pulled me off the counter, gripping my thighs tightly, lowering us both to the cool tile of the kitchen floor. Now I was on top. Liam's hands gripped my waist, steadying me as I adjusted. His muscles tense beneath me. For a moment, neither of us moved. Then slowly, I began to roll my hips, testing the movement, testing his control. A deep groan rumbled from his chest. His hands tightened around me. His restraint was slipping. I set the pace, slow at first, watching the way his jaw clenched. the way his fingers twitched against my skin, as if resisting the urge to take over. I could feel him struggling for control, and that made me want to push him further. I leaned down, my lips hovering just over his, teasing. His breath hitched, and his hands slid up my back, pulling me closer, trying to close the space between us. The rhythm grew urgent, a fire licking at my skin, pulling me higher, until I shattered. I gasped his name, my body trembling against him, my head falling forward onto his chest. Liam groaned, his grip tightening, his body following mine. Seconds later, his breath was warm against my temple. For a long moment, neither of us moved. We lay there on the cold tile, our bodies tangled, hearts pounding in sync. Reality began to creep in, the weight of what we had just done pressing down on me. I should have felt guilt, shame, regret, but all I could think about was how badly I wanted more. Some choices come with consequences, but in that moment, it didn't feel like a choice at all. I knew it was wrong, but it felt too good to stop. What would you have done? Would you have walked away,